Ding, ding, ding. Moving. Rolling. Don't get stuck in the mud. Let's see here. That was only 23 miles. Wow. Railroad tracks that do not get used. Bumpy. Bumpy. Yeah, I know. Bumpy back there. So I showed up super duper early for my pickup. I was not supposed to be there for another half an hour. And the guy showed up about an hour early. I got my load, which is 1,500 pounds of some kind of gears, machine gears. It is still foggy as hell. The problem with this pickup is their business is a new building and it's way back from the road, and the fog gets in the way of seeing it. So it's kind of hard to find because it was super foggy this morning. Long time. All right, hold on. Whippity here. We'll be jumping time zones here. Alrighty. Yeah, I showed up way early for my morning pickup, and the guy showed up early also. What was weird? Hi there, Moroka. Wow, where are you from, by the way? Said hi. Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, I had a super early pickup this morning, and it's a whole lot nicer now, but it was incredibly foggy. And I started streaming from the truck stop, and within minutes, I got into the woods. I got into the jungle, and my stream disappeared, started cutting out almost immediately. And I drove 25 miles, New Zealand, right on. I drove 25 miles down a single lane goat track through the woods. I had branches rubbing both sides of the car, the van. The roof and my antenna, my CB antenna, were slapping trees for 25 miles in the fog. And I know for a fact Bigfoot touched the van a couple times when I went by. Maybe a couple serial killers weren't awake at that time. But I mean, that was freaky getting here. And I couldn't stream it because I didn't have the ability to transmit. So I filmed it, and I'll post that video because I just thought it looked cool. It looks like winter. It's crazy. So hot here in England. This is, I am in, I can't even pronounce the name, Surgeontonville, Tennessee. This is in the Appalachian Mountains. And this area is weird. It's like a tropical environment, and it's foggy here all the freaking time, it seems like. All year round they get fog. This is mild compared to this morning. I couldn't see 50 feet this morning. I was literally driving between 20, maybe 5 miles an hour, tiptoeing through the woods. But that road was so thin that had I met a car going the other way, I don't know what I would have done. Excuse me. And that sucked. I was like, if I meet a car, I'm screwed. I mean, you couldn't even walk by the van. It was so tight. But I do have a video of that. Hey, I got other people popping up. I'm not even going to pretend to pronounce that name. That I like to know where everybody's from. We are in Tennessee along the border with, I think it's West Virginia, and I'm doing a cross-country run here of about 150 miles to drop off a 1,500-pound box, these big, massive gears. This guy helped him load it. I'm on the Tennessee border with Virginia. I can't see it on the map. And it's a tropical environment. Appalachia is tropical. Yeah, this is nothing. This fog, this is minor league. Evantown, Shakespeare. All right, cool. Of Shakespeare, rather. Yeah, this is minor league. The fog this morning was creepy. But driving in the dark when it's foggy and having the bushes rubbing both sides of the vehicle and the roof, that was creepy. Bigfoot and serial killers hiding, waiting for me to go by. So this is 100, depends on which GPS you believe. It's 160 or 174 miles. I did film the goat track I was on, and as soon as I get to where I have reception, is there signal on? Not right now, it isn't. As soon as I have reception, I will post that video. I ran it for like 20 minutes. It was, like I said, it was freaky. All right, now I got to pull out here. Wait a second, I got traffic on both sides. This road looks a whole lot faster than the one I was on. This is an actual road. All right, I'm going to work my way. That guy's going to stay there. All right, I'm going to go close lane. There we go. In case anybody's wondering, oh, they go over. Ford Transit actually has a 3.5 liter turbo. This is a 2020 Ford Transit van. It's a 250. It's the medium roof, long wheelbase, and it's a 3.5 liter turbo. Has 310 horse. I mean, if push comes to shove, this van will, shall we say, poop and get. My morning dump was 12. So speed limit through is 55. I think I'm going to go 55. Because visibility is kind of limited. Wow, it looks a lot better on camera. So I apologize if this cuts in and out or stops streaming. I'm going to let it go. And sometimes it reconnects and sometimes it just says you're done. And there's nothing I can do about it. I apologize for that. But this is Highway 11. It says 11W on the GPS. And I am going westbound along the northern border of Tennessee. And this is part of the Appalachian mountains. And this area is a tropical climate. And when I was flying, everybody took heed of this area because you could have fog like this at any time of the year, at any time of the day. It's just a weird place to drive and to fly. The speed limit here is 55, and I'm going 55. There's visibility. And I don't need it, but I run radar. I have a radar detector in here because I've had them for years. I just like to know what's going on around me. The topic I was going to bounce around with today that came to mind was gasoline fuel. I was a little kid back in the 1970s, and I have vague memories of the fuel crunch they did here in the United States. At the time, everybody was driving V8 powered monster vehicles that got 8 to 10 miles per gallon, and nobody cared because gas only cost like 35, 40 cents a gallon. So, well, thank you. We'll drive safe. Thanks. Gas was cheap, and the Arabs, the different countries in the Middle East, if one didn't sell you the oil the price you wanted, you just go to the other one. And, they bounce around. Well, that's when OPEC was formed. OPEC is the oil producing exporting companies, and they kind of monopolized and they came together, which was a smart move on their part. They should have squeezed a little bit on the prices. Instead, they grabbed, and it kind of caused a whiplash. But there was a fuel shortage. Hey, Tim. And again, everybody's getting 8, 10 miles per gallon. All of a sudden, gas is hard to find, and the prices went up. And I was 6 or 7 years old, and I very much remember the day my mother got a case of the ass when fuel hit 69 cents. Oh, she was mad. Couldn't believe it. And it just got worse from there. And this all happened around the time the EPA started changing the rules on cars. And in 1973, the catalytic converters. Hey, I'm still here. Kalamutha? Wow. Kalamutha. And cars ran on what was called, it was leaded fuel. It was referred to as regular. And the nozzle on a regular fuel thing was really large. And then they started making gases in Heitzman. At the time it was because, again, everybody got 8, 10 miles per gallon. It was just the technology of the day. And then they came out with the catalytic converters and unleaded fuel. So the gas pumps back then was one mechanical pump that was not quite chest high. You had a lever on the left and a lever on the right. One was regular, so it was called, and one was unleaded. And the nozzles were different sizes, but leaded fuel was cheaper than unleaded fuel, so people would just stick regular in an unleaded. There was a cop car in a car that was supposed to be running on unleaded. It would burn up the catalytic converter. People didn't understand it at the time, so they had to change the nozzles on the cars where it would only fit the little tiny one. And because cars made before 1973, some of them, I had in high school, I had a Datsun 240Z, and the gas cap was about 4 inches in diameter. And you would open it, you could basically stick your fist into the fuel tank. There was just nothing between you and it. And now it's, a little guard, a little guide guard. You can't get anywhere near it. But leaded gasoline, I got this thing for numbers. I remember random numbers. I remember back then they said that leaded fuel was pumping 44 tons of lead into the atmosphere every year. And it's like, for what benefit is that? It's a good thing they got away from that. I did a little research, and the only country left in the world that has leaded fuel is Liberia. Nobody else messes with it. And then you fast forward from these mechanical pumps, and your choices were literally regular unleaded. Take your pick. And occasionally you would have a second pump that would have premium. I don't remember that octane rate, it just said premium in it. And sometimes it was called ethyl. And that's back in the 70s. And I have no memory of a diesel pump at a car gas station. I don't remember ever seeing one when I was a kid. And now you have just unleaded fuel, but you have octane range. You have low, medium, and high. But they only have 2 fuel tanks in the ground. If you take the machine apart, you can get in there. All they have are 2 lines. You have low and high. And the medium fuel is a mixture. The computer mixes it. And then you ask yourself, well, couldn't the gas station cheat and not give you what you're paying for? And the answer is yes. But there are, I call them a secret shopper, people that travel around and actually test the fuel for its octane. And if you're not doing it right, you get fined for it. So try just to keep people honest. And here in the last, 15 years, for me personally, I started noticing what's called E85, which is an ethanol-based fuel with some oil-based petroleum product, but they use corn to make fuel. And I used to own a Ford Focus, which was a really good car. I really liked it. And I drove it to death. I put a bunch of miles on it. And it had a flex fuel engine, and it would use that E85 fuel. And at the time, it was like 20 cents a gallon less. Now, today, it's like 5 cents. And just for fun, I put in a tank full of E85 and ran the car. The car ran fine. Didn't feel any difference. But I'm pretty certain it was making less power because the gas mileage dropped by 25%. I was able to squeeze 40 miles per gallon out of that car, and all of a sudden I'm getting 30. So it works, but it's not terribly efficient. So in an emergency situation, if you have a flex fuel or a new enough vehicle that you can run on it, use it. But for the price of the fuel and the loss of your MPG, it's not worth it, in my opinion. So when I run this van, I run on regular fuel, a low octane. And I got out here on the East Coast, and some gas stations have one gas pump. You pull up and you can push button 1, 2, or 3, so low, medium, and high. And some stations have 3 different nozzles, one for each one, which just makes sure you're getting the right, pump that's attached to the right, because people can mix them up if they want it. But 1, 2, and 3. And then I got out east, and I think I was in Minnesota, and I pulled into a gas station, and let's count the pumps. They had unleaded low, medium, and high. That's 3. They had E85, something called Blue 88, and diesel. So there were 6 different handles at that pump. And Blue 88 was an ethanol-based fuel that had more ethanol in it, but a higher octane rating. So it was trying to find a happy space between the low-grade ethanol fuel and regular fuel. And it was a little bit less expensive than regular fuel. So I put it in the van, and I didn't notice any difference. I'm guessing the octane made up for the less power of the mixture, I guess. I don't know. And there's only one gas station I ever saw it in, but I did use it. I was like, well, that's cool. If I ever bump into it again, I'll run the Blue 88 again. And back in the day, 1930s, 1940s, when cars were new, the technology was extremely primitive. The tolerances were pretty sloppy. They ran on a cheaper fuel. The military adopted it, what was called low gas. Low gas is a very low octane crude gasoline that can be manufactured really, really easy and processed on a massive scale. And during World War II, everything the United States produced ran on low gas. And later in the war, I mean, the Germans were using petroleum to make their fuel, regular petroleum, synthetic fuel, which is a time-consuming and expensive operation to make synthetic fuel. Where we're making this ultra cheap, ultra crude, mass-produced low gas. And as time went on, low gas has faded away. I don't even know if it's available anywhere anymore. When I was in the Army in the 80s and 90s, one of the last jobs I had before flight school was I drove for a division level sergeant major, and he had a Jeep. He had the only Jeep in the entire division at this point, because Humvees were the standard. I was in the Jeep ran on low gas, and on Fort Hood, which had the 3rd Corps, 2 complete divisions, there was one place and one pump that dispensed low gas on the entire base. And I would go there and fill up the Jeep. And I think there was somebody in the first cab, the 2nd Armored Division. I think there was somebody in the first cab, a couple guys that had Jeeps also. But the Jeeps were gone by then. But I think low gas is off the market at this point. But it's super crude and it's pollutes pretty bad. But I'm just thinking about the gas prices and how they fluctuated. I was in high school in the mid to late 80s, and gas hovered around $1 back then. I remember it dropping down to 85 cents one time, but it was about $1 for the longest. Now I remember in 2000 when gas hit $2 a gallon and people were losing their minds. You go to Europe and gas is double that at least. But I remember people losing their minds when it hit $2. I paid yesterday in Greenville, Tennessee. I paid with my discount $2.43 a gallon for fuel, which is not great, but could be worse. So I'm cool with it. So the big struggle for today is to get this load out of this van as fast as humanly possible to get back on the board, because it's Friday, and if we don't get a load today, I'm going to be sitting all weekend, and I'm not excited about that proposition because you can't make money when you're sitting. So what I'm hoping for is a weekend run where you pick up something and they say, okay, have it on Monday, have it in, fill in the blank, Wisconsin or Michigan or something like that. That's the plan. That's the fingers crossed and toes crossed situation. Oof. Sun's coming up. That's cool. So I'm following this road for another 19 miles, kind of like rolling hills. I remember the gas shortages in the 70s, and I haven't, as adults, when I started driving it up to now, I've never seen this, but they had gas stations that would put out signs that said no fuel available because of the shortage of gasoline. And then they had these weird rules where if you had more than half a tank of fuel, they wouldn't sell you gas. You literally would pull up to the pump, an attendant would have to stick their head in the window and look at your gas gauge. If it was over half, they wouldn't sell you fuel. Or they could only sell you 5 gallons or 10 gallons. And then there was this thing about odd and even. The first number, because you may have letters, but the first number on your license plate, it was odd or even. You could only buy fuel on odd or even days based on that number. That's how weird it was in the 70s for fuel purchases. And I very much remember that. People would say, I can't today, we're odd. We have the wrong numbers. And then you, again, talking about the types of fuel, aircraft have 2 types. You have a piston engine and a turbine engine. And a piston runs on, it's called 100 low lead. and it's especially a 100 octane low lead. It's a specialty fuel just for aircraft piston engines are geared for that. And then the jet runs on Jet A, sometimes Jet B. The military call it JP4, which is turbine fuel, which if you look at the receipt, it says ultra low sulfur diesel. It's literally diesel fuel with some of the lubricants missing. That's why when somebody sumps their aircraft, there's always a little stash of sump fuel. As long as it's clean, you can run it in a diesel engine, which is kind of a like put it in your truck or whatever, which is kind of funny thing. And as I was sitting here thinking out loud to myself last night about fuel, it started dawning on me that the gang signs and the sign language you use as a pilot with a fueling guy are kind of universal. And some airports will let an aircraft hot fuel, which means you don't shut down. And some places won't. It just depends on the situation. The airports allow it. You have to go to a certain location. They'll have for a helicopter, they'll have like a red box. You have to be in the red box. So I used to pull into this one particular airport, and you'd call them on the radio, their frequency, and you'd say, "Hey, I need the fuel monkey. I'll be there in 5 minutes out." And they go, "All right, we'll see you." And you pull up, and you land in the box, and I roll the throttle off on the helicopter, so you're idling, and it's the blades are just kind of flopping around. They're not doing much. And the guy first of all, you'd watch the truck, because there's two different fuel trucks, one for 100 low lead, one for Jet A. And of course, your job is to make sure he's got the right truck. And, say, "Okay, I got to add gas." He pulls up, and the guy parks outside of your rotor disc, obviously. And the first thing he does is he gets out his clipboard, writes down your tail number, and then he grounds the aircraft. He has a cable from the truck. They run over and clip the aircraft. And if you're filling up, there's a designation. The hand gesture, and I watched, and this may vary depending on where you are. This particular hand gesture is we would hold our hand, make eye contact with the guy, and you hold your hand up to your neck like you're chopping your head off. That's my collision alarm for that pickup truck that just turned. You hold your hand up to like your neck or your eyeballs, like you're saluting, and that meant fill it up. If you tap your hand on top of your head, that means top it off. So they're just pat the top of your head. That means put in as much fuel that it will possibly hold, because you're going to burn it off immediately. And then he would hold this again, the gang signs. The fuel guy would hold his hand up. He would make a cross with his fingers, or like point his fingers. Like if you were to point a finger and hold it up like a fake mustache, he would do a cross or point, and he was asking you plus or minus, meaning there was a fuel additive called Crist that is an anti-icing agent that jet aircraft use at high altitude, which helicopters don't go up there. So you would do the negative with your finger. You just say negative. So it's pat your head, negative. It's just like gang signs back and forth. And the difference between filling it up and topping it off, if you're parking a plane on a ramp, on this airplane, for instance, you say, "Go fill me up." They'll like your gas pump where the gun clicks off. You fill it up to a certain point and you put the cap on, and there's a little bit of breathing space, because the fuel sitting in the aircraft will expand. Fuel does it in your car too; it expands. But if you're going to take off right now, you want to fill it right up to the cap because you need, for whatever reason, if you want it as full as it'll go, you can do that. Well, we were sitting at an airport one day. We weren't flying. It was a hot, sunny day. We're standing by the FBO, the gas station, and there was a plane parked right there. And apparently the guy had it topped off, but he wasn't flying. And all of a sudden, it sounds like someone's peeing on the concrete. This very distinct sound of someone urinating. And we all stopped and turned around, and there's like a little overflow, little line, and there was a solid line of fuel coming out of it, because it suddenly went over the lip, and it just poured out probably 2 coffee cups full of fuel just peed on the ramp. It's like, whoa, okay. And that's why you don't want to top off unless you're going to fire it up and start moving right now. That's just what was going through my head. There's still fog in the distance. You can see the trees are cut off. It shows me getting there at 10:30. That's got to be, see, the time zones around here. I'm driving back and forth between time zones, and I think I'm losing an hour. Think, but find out, because I don't think I'm going to get there in 90 minutes. This is 160, 170 miles. But anyway, I have a 1,500-pound pallet in the back with these about 6-inch diameter gears. I don't have a clue what they're used for. I have the van set in tow, and I'm going 55, and the mileage currently is 21.3 miles per gallon. It's a nice road, at least. I usually stay at Pilot Flying J because I get my discount there, but the one there in Greenville, Tennessee, it's new, it's a little too organized, and it's not big enough. But across the highway was a TA truck stop, and it was big and it was disorganized. It's been there for literally since 76, so 49 years. And I like to drive into the back and hide. I don't use a parking place a truck can use because they already have problems finding parking. But I will find an oddball spot that's not being used, and I like to hide in the back. And I was able to do that last night. And I was able to get my generator hooked up and running, and my air conditioner running, which helped so I could sleep. I also added a teeny bit of air to the tires because my vehicle had a slight pull to the right. Tires were a little low in the right, usually a little lower, so now it's driving straight, so this is nice. So still westbound, the sunlight's coming up behind us. And the fog is getting thicker. I didn't sleep all that great last night. You know when your brain won't let you go to sleep? Yeah, mine was spinning. But that drive this morning through the woods was awesome. A little uncomfortable because I was nervous that I was going to meet a car at 5:30 in the morning going the other way. God, that didn't happen. But as soon as I get somewhere where I have phone reception, I will load the video of what it looked like all through the woods in the dark with the fog. It was pretty epic. Today is what, the 15th? I picked my wife up at the airport in Pittsburgh on Friday, next Friday. So I've got about 5-6 days at the most more on this little hitch, this run, and I'm going to be at the family farm, and I will show you what's going on up there. That's kind of a interesting area. It's along Lake Erie in New York, over by the Pennsylvania border. There's a slope, a few miles, maybe 4 or 5 miles slope leaning towards the lake, and that climate, that location, the soil is perfect for vineyards. I don't know who figured that out, but it's perfect for vineyards, and they have all kinds of wine and grape juice vineyards in that area, and that's what our family has. My cousin, ironically, just bought another farm down the road. He picked up another 28 acres worth, and that's what I want to go film. Grape season is October, so I have a video somewhere in my playlist, probably called The Scenic Route, where I held a clump of grapes in my hand that were pathetically small, little teeny tiny group. And whoa, here we go. And when the grapes are full size, it is massive. Almost can't hold a bunch in your hand. They're so large. That's all. Well, I just randomly parked on the side of the road with an ambulance. So I'm kind of curious as to what they look like now, since grape season's fast approaching. And the two measurements of grapes are sugar content, which they measure, and how many tons of grapes you make per acre. The yields my cousin is getting off of his farm defies credibility at this point, but he's doing it. So all the power to him. And I'm happy for him. He's been a good steward of the property. It's been handed off to him. He's done well with it. I'm very happy for that because it only takes one bozo to screw that up, and then it's out of business. And on a larger scale, look what's going on in South Africa. The last 30 years, they've kicked off all the people that own the big farms because they said, "Oh, it's basically it's racist that you have a successful farm." So they just either killed them or kicked them off because apparently people think farms run themselves, and the farms in South Africa, for the most part, have failed completely. They're showing aerial photos, satellite pictures. You can see here's what it looked like, and here's what it is now. They've failed because they don't run themselves. And you need to be very proactive to keep any kind of farm or vineyard or cattle operation, stockyards. I mean, you gotta be game on, or it's not gonna work. But I will film that. There's some fun little features. My cousin has in his barn. He's got a Mustang convertible. I was in there and he pulled the cover off, and I went, "Well, that's interesting." And it's a beautiful car. And he only drives it in the summer. But he says, "Hey, you can borrow one of my cars while I'm here." And I was like, "I want that one." He's like, "All right, cool." I mean, my wife thinks my van's sexy, but I don't think she wants to ride around in it. I know I don't. Remember when you were a little kid, you were at school, and you looked at your teachers, and you were like, "Those people are older than time itself." I had a teacher in kindergarten. Her name was Mrs. Rainey. And as I look at her in my mind, she was 85 years old. And I asked my mother recently, and I said, "How old was she?" And she goes, "Oh, about 50. I'm like, nah. She was older than dirt. And she goes, "No, she's about 50. Uh, okay. Are you sure?" I remember her being way older than that. I guess your perspective on age changes as time goes on. I had another teacher in third grade or fourth grade. His name was Mr. Jones, and he was old. I'm pretty certain he was a World War One veteran. He had a full head. This is back in the 70s. Everybody had a mop of hair. He had a full head of white hair that was stiff. You could grab his hair and move it, and anywhere he moved it, it would stay. Which, as kids, we thought that was hysterical. And he used to read to us, where we'd all sit on the floor. He'd turn the lights off, and he would get a book out, and he would sit in a chair and read. And he would mess his hair up, and he would shine the flashlight. You hold it down by your stomach and point up, and it gives you the creepy shadows. Well, he would shine the light up at the scary parts. And it made him look creepy because of the shadows and everything. The whole mixture. And of course, it's dark in the room, and then he would get to the punchline of the book, and of course, he'd reach out to grab somebody, and we'd all lose our minds. But Mr. Jones had us wrapped around his little finger. I mean, he had us wrapped around his little finger, controlled us. And there was one other teacher I remember whose also name was Jones. This is many years later in high school, and he was a Korean War veteran. And he still had a crew cut from the 50s, and he was old. He was probably bouncing off 60 at the time, and he would lecture history. His teaching technique was fascinating, and everybody knew about it, and everybody was excited when he started a lecture because he would start talking about let's say the Korean War, and somehow the lecture would mold into horses and the effect that horses had, and then that would move off into potatoes, and then that would move off into setting up electricity and putting in light poles. And then that would move off into atmospheric conditions caused by friction and storms, and it was the whole. And by the time he was done, it came back to the Korean War, and it was all connected. And you would just sit there and go, "Whoa!" And that's the way he taught how things on the planet and life, how it's all interconnected. I learned a lot from that guy, not by taking tests, not by reading books, just listening to him talk. And I think that's where I got my fascination with older people. You just want to talk to them. And they'll start talking about history or something that just boggles the mind that you didn't know that happened because nobody wrote it down. And I always enjoyed that. My grandmother is one. My grandmother worked at a secret military government base in Washington, D.C., where they were developing radar, but you couldn't call it radar. You had to call it the thing, the device. The word radar couldn't come out of your mouth. And she was surrounded by all these weirdos, because weirdos are the people who come up with the ideas. An educated weirdo is a very usable asset to have on your team. And I'll just give you an example. If you go to NASA here in Houston and you take a tour, 2/3 of the engineers are somewhere in the autism spectrum, because they found something that fascinated them and they missed-locked on it, no pun intended. And they're really, really good at it. And they have a tendency to be the best in the world at whatever little niche they have found. And that's what they did, except the people were way more vocal back then, way more outgoing. And she said that if somebody asked for your help, one of these guys, one of these engineers, whatever they ask you for, just do it. Don't even question, don't ask who, what, why, just they say, do this, do it. And they would hand her like a box with a whoopee light on it, and they would say, deliver that over here. So they would take the box and they would walk, and it's got like an emergency siren on it. And that was the code for, this is being delivered. Nobody talked to me, nobody touched me, nobody asked what's going on, don't question what's in the box. And that was one of the things she did. And she had a little tiny office she worked out of. And then she said one day she hears hammering sounds in the room next door, and it's getting louder. And then all of a sudden, a hammer comes through the wall up high and punches a hole in the wall. And one of these crazy guys runs around the room and grabs a cable and pulls it into her office. He gets up on her desk and punches a hole in the wall on the other side going down, and then runs out the door. Doesn't say a word to her. And runs down and starts punching a hole in the next office. So he's running a cable or wire through the building. Why? Who knows? But there were no restrictions on him doing it. He said, okay. And they developed all the technology, that was being used quietly during the war. And one thing my grandmother told me way later in life, I got a term coming up here. The military has categories of things. Class 1, as they call it, that's personnel. Class 3 is food. Class 5 is ammunition. It says we're working on class 3 right now. We're trying to get more supplies, or whatever. That's how they categorize things. Well, there's something called class 6. Under certain circumstances, they'll issue alcohol. I never was around that kind of operation, but the Navy, apparently, if you're at sea for more than 30 days, they will give people a ration, like 2 cans of beer or something. But again, I wasn't in the Navy, I don't know. But so the military had class 6, and during World War II, it existed, and it existed because of my grandmother. I can toot my horn on that, because they had, in part of the testing facility, they had a stadium built, and it had like an obstacle course in it, and they could make it cold, they could make it hot and humid, they could do whatever they wanted within the confines of the stadium. And these soldiers, people that worked for the military, would put on equipment, clothing, backpacks, boots, and they would walk up and down the stairs and walk around this place to, simulate hiking through the woods or hiking through the jungle. And it would see how did the equipment work out? Was it comfortable? Did it wear out? Did it breathe properly? Did the leather would rot off your feet? It was just, they were testing to see what that gear would do. And they tested the gear itself, but they also checked morale. And my grandmother and her friend felt sorry for the guys that were in there doing that, because I mean they're in there sweating their ass off or freezing doing this test. So my grandmother and her friend would slip a beer can here and there into them just because they felt bad for them. Well, the guys doing the research noticed that there were certain days their morale went up. And then my grandmother and her friend got caught. There's a Ford Pinto on the right, the orange one. Look at that. When's the last time you saw a Ford Pinto? Ah, it's got a for sale sign on it. That'd be cool. Uh, they noticed that on days they spiked, and that's when my grandmother and her friend got caught and slipping alcohol to them. And they got read the riot act. And then soon after, they realized for morale purposes, under these extreme conditions, giving somebody something to drink wasn't going to kill anything. So they actually created Class 6 because of my grandmother and her friend. And she brought that story to my attention. I was like, wow, Grandma, didn't you something? Ooh, I got a turn. Whoop, wait a minute. I got a turn coming up here. Rutledge, Knoxville. That's me. My gas mileage. I'm at 22.6. Package I'm carrying supposedly weighs 1,500 pounds, but based on what my suspension did when he dropped it on it, I would say it's probably half that. Look, the hill over the hill. Oh, there's a lake. Looky, 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 looky. That's pretty. The family farm that I'll be heading for is along Lake Erie, and that's part of the Great Lakes. And I was reading about it, and apparently that is the largest group of freshwater lakes in the world. They're all in one place: Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, a couple other ones. Starts with a C, Champagne or something. I think there's 5 of them. They're all freshwater. Our family history to that area goes way back. I may have mentioned this on here before. It was a while back, but my grandfather, my great grandfather died when my grandfather was 15. He had to drop out of school to support the family. And during Prohibition, where everybody was in the moonshine business, uh, he lived near the lake. And my grandfather had a job. He would grab a truck, a 1-ton truck, the ones that had the flatbeds with the wood sideboards. There was a guy that owned one, and he would, quote, steal the truck. And he would also pin a $50 bill to a tree. And he'd get in the trucks, didn't have keys back then, just a lever. And he would get in the truck and he would drive down to the lake there at Lake Erie, and he would back the truck up. They have beaches, and not really sand beaches or like rock beaches in that area, but he would back the truck up to the beach in this different areas, and he would start a fire on the beach, like a bonfire. He'd just sit there and, I don't know, cook a hot dog. But he would stand on the beach, and then out of the darkness, a boat would pull up, which was coming across from Canada, which is right across Lake Erie, like 30 miles away. And they would beach in, and the guy would hand my grandfather whatever he was supposed to get paid. And the grandfather would walk home. He's 15 years old. He just walk home. And then a week or so later, he would go, and the truck would take the alcohol and go into Buffalo. And the alcohol would disappear, and the truck would be abandoned somewhere. And then the farmer would get mad because someone stole his truck, and he'd go recover back to his farm. And then, I don't know, 10 days later, my grandfather would come back and steal the same truck, which was conveniently backed into by the farmer's property with a full tank of fuel. And he would pin a $50 bill to a tree, get in the truck, and drive it to someplace else along the beach and do it again and again and again and again. He goes, that was just The farmer made money. He made money. The small, everybody got their eye. Everybody was happy. He goes, every once in a while they bust a little bit of alcohol, but nobody ever got arrested. They never actually caught anybody doing that. The irony is, my grandfather was a judge, a town justice, a small-time judge from 1945 to 1995. So for 50 years, he was the judge in that town. But he was a good dude. My grandfather was a really good dude. And I'm 6'4". My grandfather's 6'4". That's where my height came from. And he didn't talk much. Me, I don't shut up. My grandfather didn't talk much, but I think I was 14 years old when we went to visit, and I walked in the room and I looked him in the eye at the same height. He just looked at me and he went, asshole, and he walked off because he couldn't believe I was up there eyeball to eyeball with him. But he's built like me. He's got short legs and a long body. Tall guys have that conversation. They say, if you're tall, you say, where is your height? It's either on your body or your legs. And if you look close, you'll see guys are built differently. And mine's in my body, and so was his. And the great thing about that is when I would visit the grandparents, I'd get in his car. The seat in the mirror was always adjusted perfectly. Just get in and don't have to move anything. So I used to like that driving after him. I should take a picture of my wife getting in our car after I've gotten out. She climbs. It looks like she's sitting in the back seat. She looks like a little kid. She's like, how do you drive from? I said, that's where I fit. Sorry, you're a midget. I'm literally a foot taller than my wife. I'm looking left and right. Yeah, trees here across these lakes are cut off by fog, so we've got solid overcast going on. Wow, this is a really nice road. I was afraid I was going to be doing that cross country thing again through the woods, but yeah, this is a lot easier. Since I'm going 55, my mileage is up to 22.9 right now. Where's everybody from, by the way? Anybody in here new? I had a guy in here, Muhammad from Ethiopia yesterday, and I thought that was awesome. So I keep forgetting. Sometimes I go live early in the mornings. Sometimes I go late at night, and there's always people out because these streams go around the world. And most people come on here just to see the terrain, see what it looks like. So we're straight westbound in central Tennessee along the border with, I think, West Virginia. It's out there off the right side to the north of us. Virginia. Okay, you're right there. You probably know where we are then. I'm on, what am I on? Highway, this is US 11 West. Well, so I think we're fairly close to you right now. So you're used to this foggy stuff. I'm not used to it being foggy all the time. We can get it during certain seasons in Texas because of the, the Gulf Coast, but this seems to be like a year-round situation. I know as a pilot, everybody was scared of it. I didn't come over here but once, but people were scared of this area because you didn't know what was going to happen. Gone since I refueled. I got 41 miles since I picked this up. One thing I've been surprised by doing this job is I get off the interstates a lot because a lot of these, yeah, that stop sign doesn't apply to you. Don't worry about it. A lot of these small deliveries I do are to out of the way places big trucks can't even get to. So I spend a lot of time on these secondary roads and on at least a half a dozen occasions I have been blindsided coming around a corner in some little, one traffic light town, and they got a VFW haul. And when I was in the Army, I flew the Cobra attack helicopter, and they got a Cobra sitting there on a stick in their front yard. And come around the corner and go, whoa! And it just surprises me that they were able to get one of those. I've got some videos taken a while back, but I found one of the aircraft in, I can't remember what the hell it was. My helicopters that I flew, and this is one of these things you never forget, 67, which is the year it was built, 67-15715 was the aircraft I mostly flew, and then there was 15623, and there was another bird I flew once, and the last numbers were like something 15, and I found that actual bird that had been pawned off on a National Guard unit had their markings on it, and it was at a I don't remember where it was. Might have been up in Wisconsin, and it was on a podium, and I was like, whoa, I've flown that aircraft 30 something years ago, but I just thought that was crazy to bump into my actual airframe. But 15715 was my number one aircraft. That's the one that had my name on the door, which is kind of a thing. There's one barn. Tell you what, if I see an old barn and I can safely pull over, I'll jump out, show you what we're looking at. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Oh, you're lucky. Now, you go to these little tiny towns in the middle of nowhere, which is exactly where we are, and you'll find a business that's manufacturing some little thingy. And part of this job of expediting is you stand around a lot. We give you a pickup time, you get there and they're not ready, or you go to drop it off, and the guy that drives the forklift, or the guy that's got hey, Alan, what's up? The guy that's got do the paperwork isn't available. There's a cop right there. No radar. Okay. And you stand around. Don't get excited. Don't get mad. Just, roll with it. Start talking to people. And with rare exception, you meet random people out here, and they're all friendly. Everybody's friendly. There was 2 exceptions I can think about. But people are just real outgoing, real friendly. It doesn't matter what state you're in. And then you talk to somebody who's working at this little factory, this little plant or whatever it is, and they're walking around in shorts and T-shirts. And the fact the building's kind of worn down, and, they're making whatever. And I said, how long have you worked here? Oh, I started in 1982. What? It's just the idea of starting and staying at the same, job for 40 years, some little quiet, little out of the way job, to me is fascinating. And I think it's wonderful that people do it. And that's one of the things I appreciate about small town America is people act different. People think different. I mean, when I was a kid, we used to hang around with our friends. And now teenagers, they hang around in a circle, but all they're doing is playing on their phones. They might as well not be there because they're just playing on their phones. And last night, it was still light out, but I was driving on a back road and I saw a little gaggle of pickup trucks on the side of the road, and I see heads bobbing. And as I went by, I looked, and there were 5 teenagers. I don't know if the speed limit dropped, but let me slow down here. I did not see a speed limit sign change here. If it changed, I missed it. But there were 5 or 6 teenage kids, and they were walking towards each other. They were like walking in a circle. And what fascinated me is every one of them had a big smile on their face. You could just feel the happiness they had, and in their hands None of them had a phone, and all of them were carrying a fishing pole. And just the look on their faces told you they were happy. They were just ecstatic to be together, going to go fishing on this river I was passing over. And I thought that was pretty awesome, because that's kind of how it's supposed to be. You know, that's how life's supposed to be. You're supposed to hang out with people and connect, not just play on your freaking phone all the time. And it's sad that that's what most people do. I mean, yeah, you use your phone; it's a useful piece of equipment, but just remember, you know, there's a real world out there too. You don't want to miss out on. I have no idea what the speed limit is through here. I'm just backing off. Rutledge Turnpike. Oh, they're putting me back on I-40 up here. Huh. Okay. I got 28 miles to go on this. And it's saying I'm getting back on the highway for a minute. I did not see that coming. There's a political sign back there on the side of the road for somebody running for office for something. Whoa. And I remember back when I was a kid, there was a guy running for office out in California. And you really got to think this through sometimes. It is the guy's name, or last name was Jacques. And it said, vote for Jacques, he will support you. You're thinking, a Jacques strap. You know, Jacques will support you. Don't change the words around a little bit there, dude. That wasn't working too well. Let's see here. Again, I don't know what the speed limit is. That's why I'm slowing down. Let us see. Let us see. Do, do. Oh, okay. Picking it up. Picking it up. Here. Fireworks stand. Gotta have a fireworks stand. Yeah, if I find an old barn, I'll jump out and show it to you. These really, really, really old barns that are starting to collapse. People just stop using them one day, and they basically implode on themselves. Uh, the barn, which I'll show you on the family property, was put up in 1914. And it was made out of, it was the local Amish people where you get your wood from. And it was virgin forest they cut it with. And you'll see the side that, I mean, you're looking at 110 years of raw wood being exposed to the elements in the New York winter along the lake. I mean, it's just incredible that it's still there after all this time. They've had to do some repairs to certain areas to shore up the inside because the wood just age. But I don't know how much longer that barn's going to be around. It's like trees; they only last so long. Cars they last so long. You know, they don't. It's not a permanent thing. But that guy just flashed his headlights at me, so I'm slowing down. Let's see what's going on up here.
Appreciate that, driver. Yep, but in a pickup truck up there at the old Methodist church. Yeah, he sits there quite a bit. I've run up here quite a bit, so I kind of know where you guys at. Get up there on 25. There you got that old
There he is.
station SUV rolling around up there.
There he is.
Wonder, yeah, that's the only excitement I've seen back there on the big road.
Yep, there's a.
I appreciate that, my friend.
That's funny. He was right there.
We can get to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was there was a cop sitting there, and he's not running KA band. I can tell you that much. If he's running radar, he's running old K band, which I don't even have that dialed up in my system. I don't even pick up K band because it's rare. But that guy apparently was sitting there running it. Wow, that was interesting. Yeah, that was the CB radio lighting up there for a second. The truck coming in.
The old church looking at you.
Yeah, that truck flashed me, and then he was talking. I don't think he realized I have a radio in here, but I'm listening to David Dogs. Hey, David, we're doing a little cross country jaunt here with a 1,500-pound box of something. I don't even know what it is. You know, and wow, old buildings. So we're cruising here, and we're going westbound, and we're by the Appalachians, and we're on the northern side of Tennessee, along the border with, I think, West Virginia is out the right door here, pretty close. We're just on the backwoods. Let's back up a little bit. There we go. It's open.
You got it on there, don't buddy?
I saw a house back there I should have stopped at, but I got a truck back here, so I got to plan ahead for this. Yeah, the Appalachian Mountains is about as far back as Western history goes. You got the Native Americans, and you got the Pan-Asian Indians that were before the, quote, Native Americans. And then you have the settlers who came in, and this is like the first area they occupied. Was this part of the country. The United States slowly expanded westward through the 17, 18, 1900s. And they kept moving into unoccupied areas as they went west. And then eventually they bumped into the people on the West Coast. And eventually you crashed into it. So they officially considered the Wild West, as they say here in America. They officially considered the West closed in 1890. And I've also read somebody said 1914, but I think 1890 is considered the closure of the West. And all the states were not even states at the time. You had territories. I think Arizona, New Mexico, I don't think they became states until like 1905 or something, 1910. Colorado was 1876. That one I know off the top of my head. And the last two states to actually become the United States were Alaska and Hawaii in 1959. Up to that point, they were just territories. So you had huge swaths of land that you could go into, and you wouldn't bump into anybody. It was kind of free for all. It's an interesting piece of history, sometimes brutal. But just they say the West was won. They say the frontier closed. The frontier was the unexplored, uninhabited lands, and then one day it ended. You think about that. The frontier closes, and it's gone forever. It's never coming back. It's kind of exciting and it's kind of sad at the same time. But there are still huge areas in the western half of the United States where you could travel around and not see a person. And I remember in the 80s, we drove through Wyoming. This is before everybody had their fancy electronics. You turn the radio on, hit the scan button, or just manually move the dial, the still school, and you wouldn't find anything. You just blank. AM radio, FM, there's nothing there. You were so far away from everybody. And I did an expedite load back in 22. I went to Oregon with a turbine engine, and I drove across Nevada to the town of Winnemucca, which is right in the middle of the state on 80. Crossed Winnemucca, turned north, and went into I think it was Idaho, about 30 miles, and then I turned west, and there's some kind of national park up there, game reserve park, and I was driving west. It was middle of the night. again, the van has the big old bucket headlights, so I could see really well. And what I was seeing was a 2-lane road straight west, and they had trimmed the brush back. So in my mind, the trees were back from the road in the distance off to my left and right. I was in this heavily wooded area, and there's a little teeny tiny sign on the side of the road that says rest area. I stopped because that was the only thing there. It was just an area and a like more or less an aggravated outhouse sitting there. And I pulled in, went to sleep, woke up the next day, opened the door, and there wasn't a tree within a million miles of me. I could see, into the distance up on a mountain. It's desert. And I'm thinking, wow, they cut down a lot of trees really fast last night. I didn't hear it. Hey, Gutta and James, what's up? We're doing a drive right now, going west through Tennessee, carrying a little cargo here. And I'm looking around, and I'm the only person in this little tiny rest area. They got this 6x10 building is the restroom. And I got back out on the road. The sun's coming up behind me, and it was this beautiful open desert. And with God as my witness, I drove 250 miles on this road, and I had one pickup truck go past me going the other way in 250 miles. And I was seeing all kinds of little things to look at and take pictures, and I would stop. I didn't pull off the road. I just stopped in the middle of the road. Why get out of the way? There's nobody here. And I would run around and take pictures and look at stuff, and found some interesting rocks. I found some drop-offs, and just really fun area just to look. And it was barren and mountainous and absolutely beautiful all at the same time. It was a contradiction of itself. Really, really interesting area. I dropped my loads weekend, and I actually picked up something from the same place going to Florida. Look at the map. Oregon to Florida. That's a pretty serious return trip. And I went back through that exact same area, and I ran into maybe 3 vehicles. And I have a generator in here, and I keep a 1-gallon gas can with me at all times. And I was getting towards the other end where I was going to pop out, and I came up behind a really large guy pushing a Harley Davidson and his little tiny wife holding the handlebars. And I pulled past him, and I jumped out. I knew what happened because there's nothing out. There's no gas stations. And I jumped out with my gas can, and his wife started crying. She was so thankful. So I gave away my gallon of gas, and they got rolling again to get to civilization, get fuel. But they were they were in the middle of nowhere. Um, I remember that area, and I remember in Wyoming when I was a teenager, we used to drive around Wyoming. You would see people on little motorcycles, and what all of them had in common is they always had a gas can strapped on the back of the seat, because the gas tank on a little 250, 400cc motorcycle simply isn't big enough to go the distance. But you'd always see them with a gas can strapped on because they knew they were going to be in the middle of nowhere. There's an old barn. There's also a house. Battling up some. Sun's trying to break through. If you look over here, you can see the fog still pretty thick right there on the trees. The sun is trying to get out. It's not working, but it's trying. It's mileage. 23.3 miles per gallon. Not bad. Choo choo. 1-lane road ahead. Should be interesting. Don't do it. Thank you. Thought he was going to pull out. So he's wearing a cowboy hat and everything. Choo, 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 choo. I have people from all around the world that tune in here occasionally. I had a guy on here yesterday from Ethiopia, and that's fascinating. Muhammad is his name. And, got New Zealand. Got a lot of people stateside. And one of the most obscure places I've ever had, the guy said he was from Alert, 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 Canada. I'm like, what is that? Look it up on the map. You will go as far north as you possibly can, where he's looking back behind him to see Greenland. That's where Alert's located. It's some little outpost. Used to be a military outpost. I think it's more now of a weather station or a research area. It's just like going to sneak up on me here and turn colors. Hold on. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, we're going to make it. Whoa, don't you pull out in front of me. I'll tell your mother. So you got to talk to these people sometimes. In Texas, they have secondary roads. And there's one by our house. It's 1488. It's FM 1488. And the FM stands for Farm to Market. And it is legal to run cattle down that road or livestock to go to the market. Legal. Cars everywhere. You could bring your sheep out there and march them down the road. It's like that's kind of a cool feature to have. But farm to market. 14 miles and we hit I-40. We're gonna. I think we go through Knoxville a little bit and get right back off the road again. Two. 23.2 miles per gallon. Yeah, you don't really see them, but there are little tiny businesses, little manufacturing companies all around and through here. I went to one in Gary, Marshall, Indiana, little bitty factory, and they were making computer chips, like the stuff that goes in your car, and they were running 3 shifts because the computer chip shortage was really going hot here a few years ago, and they were pumping those things out as fast as they could. And there were sprinter vans like me lined up out front. There was at least 3 or 4 vans there at any given moment. And as soon as they filled a pallet, they'd slap it in the van and say, "Go," and don't stop. Get it there. Because all the car manufacturers and vehicle manufacturers needed those chips. And they were, I mean, that place was banging. Wasn't a very big shop either. Real clean, real sophisticated, but 24 hours a day they were putting out product. They didn't want to expand because they said at the time they take the time, money, and energy to expand, the shortage will probably subside and there won't be a need for it. It'll be a huge expense. So they would just say it's easier just to hire a bunch of employees or give overtime and let people run with it. Ooh. There's a couple of guys that have streams that drive truck and they have a camera up high and you can see the hood and the big front mirror, which looks kind of cool in the video. One guy's like called the insomniac trucker because he likes to drive at night. whatnot. I see those videos. I don't get to have that cool thing because I'm in a van. I don't have all that featured on it. But 11 miles start turn. Yeah, this has been a shockingly easy drive because I was looking at the map and it looked like a replay of this morning where I was going to be zigzagging, driving, just going like 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour because of the road. That's not a. Oh, this guy started smashing on his brakes. I thought we were coming up on a red light. He just smashing on his brakes. That was false advertising. Gee. I had somebody come on my stream yesterday. This has never happened before. The dude came on here and got hostile. I don't know why. He's mad at me for streaming. He decided it was dangerous to have a phone sitting on your dashboard, and he went on and on and on about it. I dug. He actually subscribed, which I don't understand that. So I went and dug him up and excommunicated him. I don't need somebody coming on here with negativity. There's enough stuff going wrong in the world. Getting on somebody's page and just being Debbie Downer. Ooh. I'm telling you, I'm going to find you a barn or an old building here. We'll find it. Oh, collision alarm. I can see him. Thank you. Yeah, this type of wooded area, this part of the country is so incredibly thick. You could walk 5 feet into these trees and you would disappear. I'm used to being out west where you can see a distance. You got a little bit, not a lot of undergrowth. Oh, still going straight. Ah, there's my traffic light. 23.3 miles per gallon. I'm surprised this stream hasn't, knock on wood, hasn't phased out because I've been having a lot of trouble with interruptions in it. And back to rolling. Yeah, this has been a shockingly easy drive. I don't like it. There's a place in Kentucky, if you're ever in the area. It's called Mammoth Caves. And it used to be a water viaduct a zillion years ago. The water moved out went somewhere else. And there's this massive underground cave structure. And it was discovered in like the 1860s. There was a guy hunting, and he fired a shot at a bear, and he followed it and found where the caves are down below, but an area where it was thin collapsed, and it's an entrance to go into it. That's how it was discovered. The guy went down in there and started looking around, and the weird effect of going into that cave is it's like someone flipped on an air conditioner, and there's cold air blowing out of it in mass. And here you are, in the heat of the summer with the humidity, and all of a sudden there's air conditioning coming out of the ground. They did way back in the day. They did tours of it. You could walk through it. Now they've got footpaths down there, and they'll tour you through the areas. During the World War I and World War II and whatnot, they mined something from down in there that was like an element needed for explosives or ammunition or something. And they've gone far enough into it, they found human remains from 1,000 years ago. It's called Mammoth Caves, Kentucky. I don't remember where it is. If you're ever traveling around the country, it's worth a look. It's worth a look. It's just a neat little place to go poke around. It'll take you down in it. Yeah, there's a tower right there, and that cell tower's cut off. That's one thing pilots, helicopter guys, when I was working in the Gulf, was you wonder what the weather's doing. You go out and look at the towers to see where the ceiling was. And then out in the Gulf, they have buoys, NOAA buoys, and it gives you the water temperature, the air temperature, the humidity, the waves. So say what the waves are, and you compare notes. And if the dew point and the temperature, would meet, it tells you it's foggy. And you open that app, and you can take your mouse and start touching all the little boxes out there, and you can really see what the weather conditions were. It's a good system. I can't imagine. That was years ago. That was more than 10 years ago. I'm curious what kind of technology they have now for weather like that. Well, nope, pull out. Don't you do it. I'm watching you. So, we're almost in a civilization. Didn't actually eat anything this morning. That wasn't well thought out. Oh, don't do it. Don't. You're going to do it anyway. Not safe, FedEx. You got cars in both lanes. See these fancy little lawnmower yard tractors? They got a front loader and a backhoe. They're tiny. I, like most guys, want one. You need it? Nope. Any use for it? Nope. I just want one to go play with. They actually have a place in Las Vegas where they'll let you drive big tractors and construction equipment, scoop dirt, move things around. It's just a big toy, just toys for adults. These guys like that stuff. There was a guy, a helicopter operator we were friendly with at the Boulder City Airport, which is the town just south of Las Vegas. And he had a deal. He got a class 3 permit. He had a machine gun he mounted on a helicopter and would let you fly and shoot up targets. And the city was mad at him. And then they really got mad when he was applying for a minigun permit. How are you a pilot, bro? How's your flying going on? It's not. My flying is no longer going on. I officially stopped flying in October of last year. I logged a total of 35 years as a helicopter guy. There were some intermittent holes in it due to COVID and whatnot, but I flew for 35 years, and a bunch of weird stuff happened all at once. But the big one was I got a letter from the FAA. They saw my medical. I had a Class 1 medical, and they give you the medical test, including an EKG, and they said, well, your EKG, your heart goes boop-de boop-de-boop, and yours went boop-de boop-de boop-de-boop or something. They didn't like what it did. And they said, you're out. That happens to a lot of guys in their 50s, a lot of guys. But they just said, we don't like this for class 1 physicals. Okay, for class 2, but my job that I had flying a medical helicopter required a class 1. So nice to about. How is your driving? Where are you heading now? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, driving. Yeah, I had a pickup this morning. Real interesting pickup this morning at in the town. I can't even pronounce it. It's Sirgoinsville, Tennessee. Yeah, I'll get in front of you. You don't like it? And I'm going to Jamestown, Tennessee, which is about 160 miles straight west. I'm in freaking civilization here. Oh, I'm about to get on I-40. Okay, that's why there's so much stuff going on. And it's just a one pallet with some heavy gears, like 1,500 pounds worth. Uh, this has been a really nice drive till we got here. Now it's not fun anymore. But they're going to put me on 40 for a little while. Looks like I'm going to clip the side of Knoxville and then get right back out into the country. But Jamestown, Tennessee, we're on an east-west line in, oh, crap. You know how many vehicles just ran that red light? Jeez. That was pretty bad there. A whole bunch of people just ran a red light. Holy crap. Yeah, this is a short load, and I'm trying to get it there as fast as humanly possible. I think I changed time zones. I must have changed time zones. It says I'm going to be there in 40 minutes, and I'm not that close. The only horrifying thing that's going on is it's Friday, and I got to get a weekend run, because if I don't get another load today, I'm going to be sitting, and I don't want to be sitting. So what I'm hoping for is they give me a pickup and they say, yeah, it's got to be in fill in the blank on Monday so I can do a leisurely drive. And then during my leisurely drive, I keep my eyes open and I see a museum or I see something that makes me go, ooh, and then I get to pull over and play. Because that's the way my brain works. So, but if I don't get that, no fun. Let's see here. 40 west, east, west, west, east, east, west. Right here? Okay, you could put a sign that says this is the way to go. You didn't. All right, that worked. Must have fart out loud. Yeah, I used to do it to my kids. Pull my finger. Problem is, they thought it really didn't. I said I got to reload. There we go. Back up to speed. This is showing 24 miles of this, and then I get back off up here. 62. Oh, there's my speed. 62. 22.9. My mileage went down. That sucks. So I'm going on 40, and yeah, I'm going right through Knoxville. Look at that. Sorry, playing with my GPS. Got to go through Knoxville, but it's after rush hour, so that helps. And we'll pop out the other side, and then we'll head up towards Jamestown, Tennessee. And my brain goes Jamestown, New York. Ooh. Nice to have the sun behind me for a change. Last week, it seemed like everywhere I go, I was driving into the sun. Ooh, brake lights. Light over. And that's what the back of the truck looks like. That's it. Moving over one more time. I don't want to be behind him. You could be on a vehicle you can't see through. You can't tell what's going on up ahead, like that traffic light back there. I don't like that. Also, trucks have a tendency to pick up anything on the road and throw it at you. Now we're going fast. When I did my cannonball back in 2020, I had a GoPro sitting on my dashboard, and I would use it at certain times. And at the end of the drive, it worked on 2 occasions, and every other file in there was corrupted, and I couldn't recover it. And that sucked. They're on my page, but that sucked. Litter patrol. Yeah, we're skirting just barely, but we're skirting Knoxville in Tennessee right here. Guessing it's going to be on our left side. Oh, brake lights, brake lights. Yep, that's the city right there. That's Knoxville. Went to basic training at Fort Knox back in '86 and '87. Way back in the old days. They moved the armor training school out, and I tried to go on base. I wanted to go to where I'd gone to basic. They wouldn't let me in. They go communists. You have to go through all these checkpoints and stuff. And I said, no, you can't be on there. We don't need to be there. But it's not like a shoot 'em up bang bang base. It's more of an administrative thing. It's a weird setup there. But that was the home of armor forever, for tanks and armored vehicles and whatnot. They did away with it. They moved it somewhere. I don't know where. Universal Uno, he's back like a bad rash in the middle of summer. What's up, mister? We're doing our run from Goingville, Tennessee to Jamestown, Tennessee. More or less an east-west run along the border. We're cutting through Knoxville, Tennessee right now. It routed me down here for some reason. We're going to go another 19 miles. We're going to jump off and back. Oh, this is the guy in front of me just now. That's the guy that's been following me, and he's bad because I'm not apparently going fast enough. So now he's one car lane closer. So, like, that's totally awesome. And a lot of people come on here, they just want to see the roads. They want to see what it looks like. I had a guy on here from India yesterday. He was going, dude, that is so not what it looks like in India on highways. This is different setup. And I can tell you in Europe, since Europe was developed way before this country got developed, they built roads and they put buildings by the roads, and they had horses and horse-drawn buggies and whatnot. And then all of a sudden you have cars. Well, guess what? Those buildings aren't going anywhere, so they have these little skinny mini roads they have to deal with. And there are people that have sold or moved over there with full-size American vehicles, and it just doesn't work. Guy had a Suburban, and it was perpetually getting scratched up because of bushes and driving one set of wheels up on a curb somewhere because it literally didn't fit on the roads. All right. Whoa, 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 whoa. Brake lights, brake lights. Of course, this guy doing an oversized load to the middle of town is not helping. Yeah, that right there, if you're not familiar, that's the pilot car with the lights all over it. They're hauling that half a trailer. They'll have one in the front, one in the back, usually. And they drive along and block people, and they like to think that they're law enforcement, and they're not, but they like to think it. And they have these specialty trucks that do this. We can get up next, this guy will show it to you. But that's half a building right there. If you look, see how it goes up the peak. The other side is the other side of the puzzle, and it goes down the other end. And these are quick slap together buildings. Sometimes they're temporary offices. Sometimes they're housing. Let's see if we get next. See how his mirrors stick way out? That's to accommodate the visibility. But that's what that guy does. And drives around and hauls trailers. And the dude following him is called a pilot car. Usually, well, sometimes they got one out front, but I don't see it for whatever reason. Up to speed. Yeah, when I get this load dropped off, I got to get fuel, top this back off, but I got to fill up my generator, gas can, both of those. I used them last night, and usually I refill them before I start driving, but I wanted to get on the road today early. It worked out. The guy came in over an hour earlier than I was supposed to be there, so I helped out. Posted a video earlier, just a straight video, and I was outside in the fog, and a deer walked fairly close to me. It looks a little further away on the screen, but I pointed it out. He just kind of wandered by, and I thought that was kind of cool because I haven't seen a deer just wandering around in the daylight like that in a while. Well, I'm breaking my own rules. Right now I'm going 71. 2.6. Trying to get through this and get back out in the open. I don't like driving in built up areas like this. It's no fun. Hilton Garden. So on the left, I don't think you can see it. There's a Waffle House, and that's a quickie breakfast food-esque 24-hour little bitty restaurant. Kind of sort of looks like a 1950s diner. And I've eaten there while driving cross country doing a direct overnight. And if you watch YouTube, you can probably go for look for Waffle House fights. People go in there drunk or strung out of their mind and want to get an argument. People start throwing chairs and fighting and all kinds of weird stuff. But I've been in there and I have met some really good people just to talk to sitting there in the restaurant. And people in Waffle House, for whatever reason, are very social. The people who work there and the people that come in there are talkative. And it's kind of entertaining. All right, 13 miles to our turn. See that tower on the left? That's a cell tower. There's companies now that are making cell towers look like trees. I mean, if you look at it, it's not going to fool you, but if you're not really paying attention, you won't actually notice it because it just kind of looks like a tree. And I think that's a really good idea. It just kind of cleans up the area, cleans up the visibility, the view for everyone. I mean, if you stare at it, it's not going to fool you, but you literally wouldn't notice it unless you were looking for it. I thought that was really just a nice way of doing those towers. You've heard people talk about getting on a plane and they say, "Oh, you can't use your cell phone; it'll mess up the navigation equipment." No, it won't. The only thing as a pilot I ever noticed about a cell phone, well, because I'm only flying, 500 feet, 1,000 ground. The only thing I ever noticed was when I wore a Bose headset, which is a noise canceling headset. That if somebody called a person on board, about 5 seconds before their phone rang, my headset would make a little buzzing sound, and I would announce somebody's phone is about to ring, and all of a sudden the guy would go, "Oh, well, my phone's going off." That's it, because it would pick up on that somehow. But as far as getting on a big old passenger plane and flying across the United States, and they say, "Oh, it doesn't, it messes up." No, it doesn't. And the cell phone towers, if you look at them, their transmitters go left and right. They don't go up because there's no marketplace up there. They shoot this way, they shoot that way, they don't shoot up. So you get up, 35,000 feet, flip your phone on, unless they have a system on the plane that's like a Wi-Fi spot, it's not going to lock onto anything. You're thinking, "Oh, it's cell tower. I can see cell towers for miles." Yeah, but you're above the cell tower, and the cell tower doesn't shoot up. Doesn't need to. It's a waste of power. So you turn on, there's going to be there. But now they're doing things where they put a transmitter on a plane that you can actually buy into or use when you're flying. And I kind of did some research here about a year ago. I was at the airport, and you look at an airplane out there pulled up by the terminal, and the aircraft is round and smooth. And if you follow the fuselage along the top, as it gets back towards the rear, there's a hump sticking up that wasn't there before. It looks like a miniature turret, like the B-17 bombers. You'd have a top turret gunner. It kind of looks like a little miniature turret, but it's just the airframe pokes up, and it's maybe, I'm guessing, 2.5 feet diameter, maybe stands up 5-6 inches, but there's a hump. That hump is a satellite hookup for phone and all that stuff. And I'm starting to see those on planes now. It's kind of a new thing. But I am not so attached to my phone that I got to make a call while I'm flying. So don't use it. Over this guy, 9.7 miles. 43. Yeah, I think I'm jumping time zone. I think I'm getting into Central from Eastern because this is telling me I'm going to be there in 25 minutes, and I'm nowhere near this place. It's sad. I'm trying to read this in the light here. Tarina Johnson? Tarina, where are you from? I'm always interested to know where people are tuning in from. Because I can go on here and stream at any time of the day, and there people jump in, and they're from all around the world. And I get a kick out of that. It's 89 miles. Oh. Ooh. Just passed a brown UPS van. And many years ago, during a downtime in aviation, I worked at UPS for a few months. I worked at they call them a distribution center. They have a little tiny area for customer service, not for people getting deliveries. Hey, Bella, what's up? not getting deliveries, but people would pick up their packages there. It's called will call. It was also the place where people would go to complain about something. And more nine times than not, you could see them walking across the parking lot and you go, oh boy, here they comes. And it was like, this is where they're going to pick up their car after it's been towed. That's the kind of mentality of the people walking through the door. They would walk in there and they're mad about a package that was sent on the other side of the United States to someplace else that's not where we're standing, that happened 3 years ago, and they're mad about it. They're yelling at us. Okay. And you see them walking across the parking lot, and you go, oh, geez, get ready. This is before the word Karen exists. Oh, Michael Kane, from Raleigh, North Carolina. I was just in Greenville, North Carolina. No, not Greenville. No, Morganton. That's where I dropped yesterday, was Morganton, North Carolina, which, by the way, is a beautiful town if you ever get the chance to go in there, into the downtown area where the high rent historic district. Beautiful houses, rolling hills, an absolutely wonderful little area, very attractive. I find a lot of that. You get in these small towns, and it was, maybe had its heyday back in the 50s, and then they decided to revitalize the downtown area, and they cleaned it up and kept the old style, but made it nice and new and put in some nice features. And it's like, wow, there's a lot of little towns out there that do that, and it's really nice. Ponca City, Oklahoma. Ponca City. Yeah, I actually drive through Oklahoma on a semi-regular basis. Where is that located, Raymond? And physically, what part of the state? I know OKC. I was just in Tulsa. I've been over to Guyman in the Panhandle. I've been all up and through that area. Ponca City, North Central. Okay, above where I normally hang out. That's cool. Well, I normally live north of Houston. I've been there 25 years. I'm a Colorado kid, though. That's where I grew up. Uh, that's home base. For this job that I'm doing, expediting, the core to where this job is northeast. This where I'm at right now, Tennessee, is about as far down as you want to go. Anywhere from here north and over to maybe Illinois. This northeast part of the country is the core for this job. 15 miles west of I-35, but up there, 25 miles south of Kansas City. Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, 35. I've been up and down 35. I actually picked up a load down in Houston, went up 45, hit 35, and went all the way up into North Dakota once. I mean, I was like off the reservation, North Dakota, and I used 35 for the entire drive. I'd never, in my life, I had never set foot in North Dakota, and I was just on some two-lane back road. I came around a corner and stopped and jumped out and took a picture by the sign. So I like, check it out. First time ever. Uh, wow, there's a lot of cars on the road right now. 3.8 miles. It's my next turn. Do you like on the right? Hold on a second. Right here, that's a weigh station for big trucks. And I am kind of sort of doing the same job, but I'm in this little van. And my maximum weight on this van is 9,070 pounds. So since I'm under 10,000 pounds, I don't have to do that. I don't have to go through those things. I don't go through DOT or commercial vehicle checkpoints. I don't keep logbooks. I don't have limitations on how long I can drive. And I can always find parking. That's why I like driving this van and not driving a big truck. And since this is my van and I'm paying for it, it's a lot cheaper to drive than a big truck. All right, it's 10:20 local, and I'm starting to think about food. Raven, Albertson Distribution Center here, Phillips 66 Conical Refinery, carbon black. Yes, I moved that stuff at home to Head Country Revenue Sauce. Pioneer Women, Maryland Manson Museum. Oh, Maryland Manson Museum. No kidding. Maryland Manson Museum. All right, cool. Yeah. I've actually made quite a few pickups and drops in Oklahoma. One of my stranger deliveries I did that was very necessary for my job was in Kansas. I picked up a very large electric motor. I want to say it was in Indiana, and I drove direct to Kansas. You know, the Campbell soup plants they have up there. And they said it's direct. It was like 1,000 miles, and when they do direct, they say, okay, based on 50 miles an hour, you need to be there no later than this time. And I got out in the middle of nowhere and set the cruise on 65. So I usually go 62, and I just kept going. And I got there at like 6:30 in the morning, and it was supposed to be there by 10. And I pull around back where they have, you know, the ramps, the loading, and there were people everywhere. There were people running around. There were lights were on. It was a lot of activity for the loading area at 6:30 in the morning, which was kind of odd. And I walked in, and like 30 people stopped talking and stared at me. You know, like I had a booger hanging out of my nose or something. And I said, I got a motor, and it was like you pulled a fire alarm. Everybody got excited. They were all jumping through rooms. Oh, hurry, get the forklift. All right, great. It was like, and they unloaded it really fast. And the guy standing there said, those motors have been here for decades. They have 3 of them. That one gave up the ghost. And they said they were losing something along the lines of $13,000 an hour or something in lost production for that motor not being there. And the guy was just excited that I was there and excited that I was early and they could get it in service as fast as they could because they were losing money. Oh man, it made me feel good. But that's what this job is about. They're short or something broke or they didn't have enough of something and now. But yeah, that area has a lot of processing, a lot of plants and stuff, maybe chemical oil refineries. It was in Wyoming too, I noticed. A lot of chemical plants and oil refinery plants. Right, here's my big turn. Whee! At least there's less traffic. So, oh, holy crap! All right. Wow. This says my next turn's at 50 miles. I thought we were getting off this road. Sounds like hot shots. Yeah, this is expediting. Hot shots is that's kind of the name they use, but that's a little more local in nature. On a smaller scale, you have couriers, some with a pickup truck or a small van, and the hot shot guys have a tendency to be trucks with fifth wheel trailers. And what we're doing here is called expediting, and it is dominated by Sprinter vans, and they're white mostly. 99.9% of them are white, and they're everywhere on the road. You just don't notice it because they're invisible. I never did it until I started driving. So if you see a white van that literally has no markings on it, take a look at the license plate. You know, I'm in Tennessee. You see one goes by and it's got a Florida license plate. That guy's an expediter. He's out of this area. And that's how it works. Is we basically do the job of a truck driver on a much smaller scale. Wilton, Brazil? Really? Wilson, Aspen, Brazil. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, but it's called expediting. And this, from what I've seen, this is not a job that young people do. This is a job people, I'm going to say 40 years old, all the way up into retirement age do. And a lot of the guys I bump into used to be truck drivers, and they just don't want to mess with Trump arrived in Russia. I have no idea. That want to do this. It's like truck driving is easier. Less regulations, less stress. You don't have to worry about parking. It's just much more relaxing version. And I was talking about this yesterday. There was a YouTube channel by a guy. He was in his early 20s, and he decided he wanted to be an expediter. So I don't know how he did it, but he went out and bought wow, Brazil, that is cool. He went out and bought one of those Mercedes vans, like crazy. 48 sounds like a job I'd like. Do you require? No, that's the best part. There is no CDL requirement for this job. Just whatever basic license your state has to drive a car. That's the best part. There's 3 ways to get into expediting. The easiest and cheapest way to do it is to be a fleet driver, because like the company I drive for, they don't own any vans. They have people like me, owner operators, and then you have people that own vans that hire drivers. That's a fleet driver. And there was one guy that he actually owned 5 vans, and they find drivers to drive them. And then you work out a deal with him how you split the profits. And I've heard from conversation they split like 70-30 or 35-65 or something like that. But that's something you work out with your the guy that owns it. That's the cheapest way to try this job because there's no expense to you. You're not paying. You don't have to get a van or anything. You're letting them do that, and then you can try it out. And some people find out they don't like it. And like I was saying about that kid, he went out and bought the Mercedes, brand new, the big Mercedes that'll hold 4 pallets. He dropped probably $70,000 to do the job, to buy the van. Then he had it outfitted. He took pictures of it, video. Oh, it had a bunk and a fridge and a microwave and a pop down TV and I don't know, a hot tub and a back massager and I don't know, a stripper pole. He spent a lot of freaking money on his van. And then he started shooting videos about, oh, you're out here, you do this. The kid lasted 3 weeks and he said, I don't like this job. I don't want to do this. And now you're stuck with this brand new van and all this expense. I mean, it was just. So if you want to try it out, become a fleet driver. If you like, get your own van to drive. And let's see, how did they pay? I have no idea how. Again, I've never done the fleet thing, but so there, like I said, 3 ways to do it. There's being a fleet driver. There's doing what I do, which this is my van. I own it. I pay for the gas in it, the maintenance and everything. But I operate underneath this company. They have a motor carrier number, and I operate under theirs. And they do two things for me. They find the loads, they work the load boards, and they pay for my loaded commercial insurance because you have 2 insurance policies, which is a freaking scam. One policy when you're empty and one policy when you're loaded. So I pay my empty policy and they pay the loaded policy, which is a lot of money. But they also work the load boards, and I've only been in the office and seen the dispatchers one time, and they look like gamers. They sit at a desk and they have like 6 or 8 computer screens, and they're clicking on buttons because the computer tells them the dimensions of my van, my payload capacity, and where I am, and it's searching within 75 miles of where I'm sitting. And then some people will have notes on their file, and I've heard some of the stupidest things. The guy says, oh, I don't want to do any runs over 100 miles, or I only want to drive in Pennsylvania, which, yeah, oh, good luck, dude. The only thing I have in my file is keep me out of Florida, because you get to Florida, you just can't get out, and that sucks. And then they know how much the loads are worth. They click and they call you and they say, hey, we got one for you, and then they take a small piece of it. But the company's also paying the insurance. Now, the third way to do it is to get your own van, get your own motor carrier number, pay all your own insurance, and dispatch yourself, which I don't understand the nuances of dispatching, and I certainly don't understand how you do it driving down the road. You're kind of busy in the van. So while we're driving right now, they're actually looking for loads to pop up on boards to catch my next one. And I've actually been called going down the road loaded. They're saying, okay, we got one for you for this afternoon, or we got one for tomorrow morning. And that's what you're looking for. Because you don't make money when you're sitting still in this business. How much they pay, it's a moving target. This load, I can tell you this load I have on board here is 160-mile drive, and I had to go about 80 miles to get to this area. And I think they're paying me $265, which isn't a lot of money, but my expenses are low. I did a load from south of Omaha, Nebraska to Morganton, North Carolina, and it was like 980 miles, and I got paid $1,000 for that. Just throwing numbers out there. And you can do a 100-mile hop for $200. You can do a a 500-mile hop for 475, and it just depends on where it is and where it's going and when it's being delivered. There's a bunch of variables, and I get paid every Friday. But it hits my account like clockwork every Friday, so keeps my it's predictable. Wait a minute, get off there. You're not going to make a bunch of money doing this, but this is a low stress job. When I was flying, it's like, oh, I visited my mom in Ocala, Florida, just before a hurricane hit. I couldn't get fuel until I got to Alabama. Yeah, actually ran out of fuel on the off ramp. Coasted to the pump. Wow. I know. Yeah, that happens when power goes out. Do you remember I flew Hurricane Katrina, and then a month later or 5 weeks later, another storm beached in, and over in Louisiana, a little bit to the west, and nobody was even paying attention to it, but it thrashed that area. And I flew Katrina for a month nonstop, and then I went to go home. And at the time, I had a car. It was a Volkswagen Bug Turbo S, electrical nightmare, but really, really fast. It was a twin turbo. Yeah, Rita, that's it. It was a twin turbo car, and it ran on premium fuel. And I got filled up. We were flying out of Baton Rouge, and I got down on 10, and the storm knocked out power. So like Beaumont and Lafayette, Louisiana, they were basically out of power. They closed. You could not physically exit the highway. Get off the highway. They had military or police guarding the exit. They didn't want people even going in town because there was no power, no fuel. And I'm driving in my car, and it dawned on me, they're not out here running speed traps right now, are they? No. And this twin turbo car would do 130 miles an hour, and I wound that car up to 130 miles an hour. I was doing 125, 130, all the way on 10, all the way through Louisiana into Texas. And I got on the outskirts of Houston with a quarter tank of fuel and found my first gas station open. But I said, they're not running speed traps. They're too busy trying to keep people from looting. So I just went, pull the trigger. Whee! I'm running radar and everything, but there were very few cars on the road. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, when natural disasters happen, that's when the gouging starts and all the stupid happens. Yeah, when I went to go fly Katrina, I had just gotten off hitch, and I got a call. They said, we need you over here. So I drove to Baton Rouge, is where everything was flying out of. You pull into a gas station, and they would put trash bags over the gas pumps, which is the universal sign that there's nothing here. And I got up there. We started flying that dumpster fire. Yeah, that was a mess. And the weird part about flying in that airspace is it was super, super crowded, and we were making up rules as we went along because there was referred to, as how we're supposed to do this. They closed the airspace down, put a temporary flight restriction, a TFR, over the airspace, so they had an AWACS plane flying around. His call sign was Omaha 44, and he was controlling. You had to have a code, a transponder code to get the airspace because, anybody with an airplane in the United States was a rubberneck, was going to come down there and fly around and look out the windows. And they were running people off. Yeah, that was 20 years ago. Wow. 2005. 38 miles. Jamestown, going to Jamestown, Tennessee, and I got something. I said their gears are about 5-6 inches in diameter with really thick metal gears. I don't know what they do. I was listening to a lot of that. I'm a ham radio operator. Okay, that's cool. Talking about ham radio operators. We were flying at times, and we were on FEMA's payroll, and sometimes they would call us, and sometimes they wouldn't. There was really no pattern to it. But they gave us a cell phone so they get a hold of us. So we're back at the Baton Rouge airport. Someone has a radio turned on, and there's all these nationwide talk shows. And all these cheese balls are calling into the talk show. Mind you, these are people that don't know where Louisiana is on a map, but they all have an opinion about what's going on and what's happening and why it happened. And, some guy living in Detroit's got an opinion. Another guy in Maine, oh no, this is what's going on. Shut up. Well, I called that show. I called their number, and of course you get screened by somebody. And I said, hi, I'm a helicopter pilot, and I'm flying in New Orleans, and I'd like to straighten a few things out. Guess who went live on the air next? And I said, listen, all these, and I wasn't very nice when I was saying it, because idiots are calling in that don't have any idea what they're talking about. And then I just laid out what was happening, what wasn't happening. And I said, oh, so it's not like, no, that's not what's happening. I said, and don't have someone tell you otherwise, because honestly, of all the people who took part in that mess down there, the pilots are the ones that saw the whole thing. And all the people that were down there, they were working in their area, and they may have a good idea what happened right where they were at. But they don't know what was happening all over the place. We did. Crystal, hey, what's going on? So that's kind of cool. You got to listen on the radio to it. One of the funnier things we did when we were down there, and I talked about this to somebody yesterday, to the west of the Superdome, is that what they call it? There's apparently some really nice neighborhoods because the houses were big and they were spread out, but you could only see the upper half of it. We were flying by and there was a guy down there in a rowboat, and he had a bunch of boxes in the boat, and we kind of circled around kind of lazy to watch what he was doing. And this guy was rowing up to people's houses, knocking out the windows on the second floor and going in the houses and robbing them. Just using it as his opportunity to go steal stuff. So we watched him go up to this one house that had a second floor patio, and he got out and went in, the patio and broke in. Well, the guys on board the aircraft were looking down, and in a good Christian-like way, we hovered down over his boat, shot it full of holes until it sank. Figure that one out, buddy. That'll give you something to do. So when I drop this load off, I'm going to call dispatch and go, okay, they've got tracking in my vehicle. They know where I am. And I'm going to say, okay, which way do I go from here? Because we're going to be off the beaten path. So I got to go, which way do I go to where I can get my next load, because we're isolated here. So I don't even know which direction I'm going to be heading in here in the near future. About an hour out, apparently. FJB and FFB. I used to have an FJB sticker on the back of my van, my last van. Yeah, is anybody watching the news today? There was something on the feed at 5 o'clock this morning that said that Trump was meeting with Putin in Alaska for some reason. Interesting that we bought Alaska from the Russians for 2 cents, the equivalent of 2 cents an acre. And at the time, the guy, the dude who pushed it, he was a senator named Seward. And they called it Seward's Folly because it was a really bad idea to spend that money. It was like $50 million. And the Russians had gone into Alaska and hunted seals because they're into that fur business. And they wiped out the seal population. So in their minds, Russia was valueless. Excuse me, Alaska was valueless. So they thought it was they were pulling a fast one. And then the American population thought it was a waste of money. But now look what we have now, the oil reserves and what's going on. And Alaska, if you pick it up and drop it on the United States, it's shockingly large. And that was a really good call by you. That's why you have a town called Seward, Alaska. Named it after that guy. 7.5 million, even less. But yeah, that was one of the most awesome purchases they ever made. But they'd like to have that one back. Like I said, my wife and I are 6 days apart in age. We're both 57. She's 6 days older, so I make sure to rub that in her face every year for 6 days. Ask her about the future. We're going to be expatriating as the plan to pack up and leave the country when we get to 62. The question of where we're going, I have a bunch of different places. Bunch of different places we're eyeballing, and the reason you can't plan this far out is the world changes. There was a time Costa Rica was the great place to go, and then it kind of got overloaded with foreigners. The prices went up, and the violence is up. And in the last couple of years, Portugal was the hot place to go to. So now the Portuguese are getting angry because Americans are going over there and acting stupid. So there's a lot of variables. Well, there's a couple places in Alaska I find interesting, but my eyeballs are leaning that way. Even though that's not outside the country, it does appeal to me. So, but again, that's 5 years from now. So I'm just going to keep kind of looking, keep my eyes open. Somebody mentioned Thailand, and that Southeast Asia doesn't really turn my crank, but your money goes a long way in Southeast Asia. And then about 3 days ago, I watched a half an hour video by a guy who just laid out what's going on over there. I tell you what, there ain't no way in hell I'm going to Thailand. They've got all kinds of weird laws and rules over there, one of which is you can't own real estate. And sometimes these guys go over there and marry a local yokel, and they buy a piece of real estate. In a split second, it's paid for. It's in her name, and you're out. There was a guy that found this little woman to marry, and they bought a farm and big piece of real estate. Everything was great. Everything was wonderful. And then he had to go to Australia for 2 weeks, came back, and was met at the front gate by a guy with a rifle that said, "Don't come back." Yeah, whoa, what's going on here? Why are we stopping? So you got to watch out for the scams. If there was a woman, I've watched another video, a woman packed up and moved to Africa. I guess she said she was, tired of all the racist white people she's surrounded by. So she went to Africa, and she didn't like that one bit. She said, "Everybody here is trying to scam you. Everybody here is trying to rip you off. Every time you turn around, they're trying to take something from you." She said, "The water, you can't get clean water. The electricity turns on and off constantly. The roads are terrible." This was something she said. "You can't find snacks. There's no snacks." Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know that was going to be on the list of things you have to have. She was running down all the things wrong with it. So you gotta think about that. I looked into Ecuador. Ecuador they use U.S. currency down there. They don't even have their own currency. But they have a stray dog problem, and they said there's dog poop everywhere you go, and they have inconsistent power. One place as an American you go that your money really goes is Argentina. And if you get a free moment, Google this. It's called the blue dollar. It's an unofficial exchange rate. Whereas in the United States, everything is a credit card or a debit card. In Argentina, it's cash. They like to see the actual money. And the Argentinian people do not have access to American greenbacks. Very limited access. So they will exchange local currency, which fluctuates, for hard American currency. For some reason, $100 bill is worth more than 520s. I don't get that, but it's called the blue dollar. It's a legal exchange rate that's unofficial, and there are places where people literally stand on the street corner, and I think the word is campos, They're standing there saying, Campos, say, literally, we want to exchange American currency. It's on the up and up. And whereas I think the last time I looked, the official exchange rate was 900 to 1, the blue dollar is 1,300 to 1. So you could literally get an extra 20-25% value out of your money down there on a rate that's already good to buy real estate and whatnot. So something to think about. Like I said, Google the blue dollar and read about it. And I've had people say, well, that's not legal. The heck it isn't. If you and I are, if I'm selling you a comb and the comb's worth $1, well, if we both agree it's worth $2, then it's worth $2. Nobody else gets to come in here and say, no, it's not. I love these trees, by the way. Uh, six, two, 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 two. Hey. I woke up at like 4:30 this morning, started flopping around, and I just realized my brain wasn't going to let me go back to sleep, so I packed up, started driving. Wow, look at that view. Look at that. Okay, truck, keep going. You're blocking my view here. Try that again in a second. Dump the trees open up. Guy's coming up on me now. There is a place, Kentucky, I think it is. You drive around a corner and there's a sign on a road, looks just like this, going up the side of a mountain. There's a drop off. I don't know if you can see that, but that drops down into a valley right there. And we're driving along, and there's a sign on the side of the road, like a street sign, but it says site of a bus crash. And the date was May 14th, 1988. And I looked it up, and apparently some bus got in a massive accident right there for reasons. I don't know why, but it killed like 30 some odd people. And it's just in a random space like what we're driving on now. So I'm guessing somebody pulled a stupid. Here we go. Here we go. So this is Interstate 40 westbound right here. I just like this area. These trees, like I said, you walk 5 feet into these trees on either side of the road, you're gone. You'll never find the body. So isolated, so thick, the brush here. Yeah, if you're not from the United States, I want you to look at that white line on the side of the road. See that white line right there? There's about a 6 or 8 inch gap, and then there's that little bump, that little dark area. That's to wake you up if you fall asleep or you drift off. So listen to this. Did you hear that? It shakes the whole vehicle. That's what that's there for, to let you know you're going off the road. It's kind of an interesting idea. Central time zone. Okay, there's the sign. Okay, all right, that's why they was saying this. All right, I've got 50 minutes to get to my destination time. All right, I'm on a slight hill. I'm breaking all the rules. I'm in neutral. I'm gonna coast. Yeah, that's one of the things about this job is you bounce back and forth across time zones. So when they're giving you pickup and drop off times, you need to look real close as to what time zone they're talking about because you can miss by an hour pretty easily. Okay, right now we're doing 65 and I'm not even in gear. There's all kinds of rules about coasting. I completely ignore them. Back in the, I'm thinking about the purchase of Alaska. Back in the mid 1970s, there was a guy in California that owned a big piece of farmland. Well, it wasn't being farmed; it was a piece of land he could have farmed, but he allowed people to throw car tires on his property. And back then, he charged 25 cents a piece to put car tires just to put them on his property. And he had a big plot of land in the middle of nowhere, and they made these mounds and mounds and mounds and mounds of tires. And I mean, it went on for acres and acres and acres. It was crazy. And somebody asked him, "Why are you doing this? I mean, what are you going to do with these tires?" He goes, "I'm just going to sit on them." And he goes, for what? He said, environmental dumpster fire. He goes, at some point in the future, somebody's going to buy these tires off me. There's going to be a need for them. So he got paid, again, 1970s, 25 cents per tire and had God knows how many acres of these tires piled up. And then they found out you could grind up and reuse the rubber. You can also use the ground up rubber in highway construction. That's why when you go to the tire shop and you put new tires on your car, they hold on them, they sit on them, and a government paid for vehicle comes around and collects them because they grind them up and use them in highway construction. They ripped the cord out, recycle the metal, and then they found other ways to melt the tires and use it as a petroleum based product. They have value. So this guy was paid God knows how much money for people to dump tires, and then the government, 40 years later, bought the tires off him. That's that's thinking outside the box because they needed a bunch of secondhand rubber cheap, and that's where you had it. Everybody knew about it, so he made money coming and going on that deal. And all the tires are gone; they're no longer on his property. He had like 10, 12 acres of tires piled up. Smart ass. People babbling on the radio.
I could blow the whole axle under it. He's just getting his bearings on the situation. Probably right.
I'm not sure what they're battling about. All right, another 18 miles to the next exit I get off at. 22.3 miles per gallon. At least the traffic thinned out enough. That guy's in a hurry. So I was asking, is anybody watching the news? What's going on with that Trump Putin situation? Are they talking about it? I kind of get that's a higher control. I kind of get a kick out of what the Russians think they're doing. They're trying to threaten NATO. They're trying to threaten. I was like, guys, you can't beat your way out of a paper sack in Ukraine, which is right across the street. You can't work with. You can't do anything with it. So how do you think you're going to pack up what little you have left of your military and go somewhere else and kick somebody's ass? How does that work? I never thought the Russian military was all that awesome, but they've kind of proven themselves to be a really low grade paper tiger. Anybody look up the blue dollar? Whoa! Well, that's something big in the middle of the road right there. I'm gonna check out the Blue Dollar, see what's going on there. There is a town up in the mountains, kind of at the base of the Andes in Argentina, called Bariloche, which is Bariloche. It's on a lake. It looks like Switzerland. And that's where all the Germans after the war that had money ran to because it kind of looked like home. And I think the last of them died off in the year 2000. They actually took camera crews up there and found them and talked to them in that community. But if you look it up on a map or look at the images, it's a beautiful area.
We got into it.
Pick up the rocks. Look at that. You got to cut that to make it fit. Go through here. You all super mover. 15 months. Yeah, I didn't eat this morning. Now it's almost 11 o'clock. Well, I guess it's 10 o'clock technically, but 11 o'clock as far as my body's concerned. So I need to get this out, get something lunch on. Oh, oof. But first things first, get this in the done category. The way this with this company, the way I get paid is I pick up a load, I get paperwork, and we have this big rubber stamp we put on it. We fill out the information, so it's easy to find. With my vehicle number and what they call a pro number. The pro number being the assigned load, and with some other dates. Then I take a picture of it on my phone, and it goes into the app, and they get a copy of it. Blah blah blah. When I get to the destination, when I drop off, I hand them that thing. I said, just give me a signature and a name I can read. And then I put that in the app, and then I take a picture of it. Boom, it's set in. It's official. It's closed. And anything I do up to 11:59 Sunday night goes on the paycheck for the next Friday. So that's the clock we're racing. And I like getting my stuff in the van and then get to where you need to go as fast as humanly possible and get that load on the ground, signed off and out. And then not only does it put me on the pay scale, it puts me back on the board, because right now it says underload and they won't hand me anything, but they will call and offer me something occasionally. But I like being on the board because not only does it open me up for another cargo, but at that point I can look on the app, and the app tells us how many company vehicles are around me, where I am in the pecking order. There might be 3, and I might be 3 of 3. So the next 2 loads that pop up, somebody else gets. And then I get the third if a third one pops up, and it may or may not. So it's kind of a race to get back into that queue to get a load. And I have talked to new drivers with the company. There is a couple of voodoo tricks you can use to get a load. One of which is, don't be ready. Be busy doing something else. Because if you're sitting there in the driver's seat with your hands on the steering wheel waiting to start the engine and go, they're not going to call you, because the expedite gods will smite thee, and you will be sitting there with nothing. But I guarantee if you get your bag of laundry and go into a laundromat, throw it in the machine, and the split second your clothes are full of the water, the phone will ring. Oh my God. You need to go pick up a load. It's 50 miles away. You need to be there in 7 minutes, or something like that will happen instantly. Guaranteed. Or get comfortable. Spread out, open your doors, get your chair out, set up a TV, start cooking something. Boom, time to go. That always works. Or start changing your oil, be halfway through it. Hurry up! Oh my God! You got to get there before they close. Yeah, that works like a charm. Which reminds me, what's my oil looking like? I was hoping to get to back to the farm tomorrow, but 26%. I might make it. I'm trying to get to the farm where I can change my oil there on Saturday or Sunday. 11 miles. Next turn.
Fit to get on.
See that vehicle just passed us? Got that car top carrier? It consists of two pieces. The little skinny bottom piece and the top part that usually has a hinge on the front so it opens on the back and you put whatever in it. I was driving along one night and a guy would shoot past me with one of those on top, and the only thing that was there was the bottom part. That guy is not going to be happy next time he gets out of his vehicle. Look, all his bags are wherever, He's going to get out and go, damn. Man, no, I'm still in Tennessee. All right, there's a rest area coming up, and I literally have to go move around a little bit because I've been sitting here for how long? 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Jeez. Yeah, I've been sitting still for 2.5 hours. I'm going to pull in here real quick and jump out and walk around and hopefully refill my water bottles. I'm running out of water. Big bump. Hooah. And do a couple other things. But I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave this running, and I will be back here in a couple seconds. My mother, who's nuts, she collects road maps, and sometimes they give them away here. Oh, that's a nice setup. Look at this. So there's a Sprinter van right there. Where's he from? What's his plate say? He is from Arizona. Wow. Yeah, that guy's way out of pocket. He's way out of pocket. So this is our local rest area. Pull in here real quick. All right. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to run in here for a second. I'm going to hopefully get my water bottles filled up. And I will be back in less than, I don't know, 3-4 minutes. But give me an opportunity. Where's my other bottle? Oh, there it is. Because I don't like paying for water because I'm a tight ass. I like to use them. They have water refill things here. But give me a minute and I'll be right back. I don't want to shut the stream off, though. And that one. There we go. Ha! It worked. They had the water refilly thingies. That specialty thing where you put your water bottle on it and it's on a water fountain and it refills. Ha! That worked. That was awesome. Because some of these places don't have that. Because it's a freaking communist conspiracy, if you ask me. Seat belt. Turn off that. Go to tow mode, and we're back in. Yeah, the guy next to me was an army dude. He's driving a government-issued pick-em-up truck, and he was in uniform. I sat there and talked to him for a second. Fellow army scum. There's a nice little rest area.
Around this road over the hill, I'll be in reverse.
Oh, he talks with an accent. I heard that. Alrighty. No parking. Why? It's shady over here. Kind of nice, actually. All right. We are back in action. Reloaded. Have to take my trash out. May have wandered into the restroom real quick. And got to move my phones around. We are back at it. And no, I'm not stomping on it. I'm just accelerating because I got to get up to speed. This guy's going to be mad at me because I'm moving over. Tatas. 62. There we are. Back at cruise speed. Oh, is that a lane? Looks like it's a lane. Oh, alrighty. I'm showing 8.2 miles to my next turnoff. The ETA is now 40 minutes from now. Am I going to make it? Right lane ends. Oh, 1,500. Oh, that's plenty of time. Oh, you want to speed up, do you? Turbo van. Ain't that fast, dude. Well, that's what 80 looks like. This Jeep is passing us. He's got flip back top. Look at that, blowing in the wind. It's like a parachute. Roadkill. Ooh. Get my other shades here. So our goal here is to get this dropped off, get lunch, and to get fuel in the van. In that order. Ooh. That bridge right there reminds me of Nevada by Las Vegas. There's some areas of some heavy traffic out of nowhere. And in this one mountainous area, there's a bridge, but there's no roads anywhere near it. And you drop by, you look up, you'll see them every once in a while. There's no on-ramp, off-ramp. There's no roads. There's nothing. It's a real mountainous area. And we're flying the Grand Canyon. You would go over that area and you look down, and there literally is no road attached to it. And what it's there for is an animal crossing. And somehow it's got dirt on it, grass growing on it. And somehow sheep and elk and whatever, those mountain goats and whatever live in that area, they somehow figured out that they can use that bridge and not have to walk through traffic or walk across the highway. And how they got taught that. I don't know, but you could see the wear patterns on the ground of or things, animals, livestock converge and then come out the other side to spread out. You could literally see it. So they're smart enough to know that, hey, I don't have to walk across the highway. I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, our turnoff is at 4.7. We're turning on a highway or some kind of secondary road called 127. Don't know what it looks like or what we're up against. So, yeah, brains. Yeah, they do. It was interesting to look down at it and see all the wear patterns of the soil and the grass where they all squeeze that little choke point and then spread out on the other side. But that was kind of cool. And that area around Vegas is extremely dry, and there's not even that many people that have green grass in their yard. They make rock gardens. They make rock gardens and whatnot, so grass is unusual. But there was a couple of places that people did have grass, and mountain goats, the longhorn, the sheep with the curl, I guess it's a ram with a twisty, windy horns. They'll come down out of the mountains in mass. You'll get like a dozen of them. They'll stand together and eat green grass in your yard. And you're walking within 10 feet of them, and they're looking at one of them to keep an eye on you. There was always one looking, and the rest of them would be eating. But you would be with 10 feet of them, and they would be looking warily, but they wouldn't leave because that was the only access they had to that. And I got some pictures of my wife, turned around and looked back at me, and there's this army of whatever those are called, rams or whatever, standing there chowing down. Buckies. Whew. When I was a teenager, we lived up in the mountains in Colorado, kind of off highway. We're almost in Wyoming. And you get off Highway 287 for the one that was at, and you would go down a gravel road, zigzag through some canyons, and go up a hill. We lived up there. It was a mile and change off the main drag, and you were kind of off-roaded a little bit getting up there. I had a Kawasaki 440 LTD, if anybody's old enough to remember those. And I put, I think, 38,000 miles on that bike, which was a phenomenal amount of riding back in that era. My little 440, and I ran up that mountain, and, up and down, up and down, up and down. And one time I came home at night, it was dark. I sipped, so, the little ruts in the road, where everything is, so you get kind of a rhythm. I think I'm flying around a corner, and there's a cut in the canyon. That's where it's like waves. That's what the terrain looks like. I go through the cut in the canyon. There's a deer hiding in the bushes waiting on me. I'm going past where he's hanging out. He jumped out of the bushes, and he hit the motorcycle. I don't know if he went under or over my leg, but he hit the gas tank and knocked the bike over. It bounced off, and then he disappeared like ha ha ha, and he ran off into the bushes, and I fell over. That is the only time I've ever laid down on a motorcycle, on a street bike. I've been dirt bikes, and I hit the ground, and I'm laying there with the handlebars, in the grass with the handlebars twisted. The left mirrors broke off. I'm laying on my side, and I've got grass and peat moss and shoved into my face shield, and I'm laying there on the ground. The bike's still running, some carburetor, blah 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 blah. I'm laying there, and I'm like, yeah, someone's going to believe this, and then have to extract oneself, from out from under that with all this mud, dirt, and I rode up to the house, and I'm trying to peel all this junk off. And I'm like, no one's going to believe I got knocked off my bike by a deer, so I may want to keep this to myself. But that little dent in the tank remained. Oh, here's my turn. Here's my turn. 127 to Jamestown. So get this thing out as fast as I can. I've got the hunger is pretty bad, but I'm going to suffer through just to get there. Yield sign. Nobody coming. I'm gone. 27 more miles. Jeez. I tell these people to move their factory closer. 259 is the gas, which tells me kind of the gas prices in this area aren't all that bad. So when it's getting around $3 a gallon, I start getting a case of the ass. Well, they're doing all kinds of stuff here. There's Mountain Motors. They're really working this area over. Yeah, if you look on the left, that means they're expanding the road. They're buying everybody's front yards. That's why the buildings and businesses that were built so far back, they were anticipating. Light poles on the right, they can't move the road to the light poles, but on the left, they've got space. So, yeah, this area's about to blow up with construction. Get the books back. I pulled in because I was trying to burn some time this morning. When I got into that Surgeon Goinville place I was at this morning, I found a little hole in the wall, heavy emphasis on hole in the wall car wash. You drive in and put your coins in and do your thing. The roof on it was wooden framework and it was rotting. I'm looking at that going, is this going to fall on me? And the spray wand was kind of weak, and there was a scrub brush, but the scrub brush wasn't stiff. It didn't have like a stick attached to it. It was just a little floppy brush. And like, what are you supposed to do with this? And I don't even think it was spraying soap when I was using it or rinse. It was just water. And one of the little scams that those car wash places do is, the soap and the wax and all that stuff. It's in a tub in a container. Well, they'll let the containers go empty and then accidentally on purpose forget to replace them. And just it must have just run out. They haven't put a new container in there in 3 weeks because it's cheaper. It costs them less money. You're just paying for high pressure water. I'm on the Epstein list and had a blast. Are you now? Yeah, that whole talk about the quote unquote Epstein list, I find a little entertaining. There's this crowd of people saying, I don't even know if a list exists, but there's this crowd of people saying, oh, Trump's hiding it because Trump's on it. And I go, they chased him down and impeached him twice trying to get rid of him. They raided his house. They brought him up on felonies that weren't felonies, they had no jurisdiction over in the first place, and convicted him of that, which got tossed out. And they tried to kill him a couple of times. If they had something with his name on a list, I'm pretty sure they would have thrown that out there. I mean, they created the Steele dossier and the Russians, and I mean, they went out of their way, including 2 assassinations, to get rid of him. They wouldn't have said, "Oh no, we won't. We're not going to release that." That's just not reality. And I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the Epstein situation, but they're talking about these girls that were down there, and I'm pretty certain they didn't snatch these girls off the street and force them down there. I think the conversation went something like this. Hey, if we can get your attention for the next 30 or 60 days, I'll pay for your entire college tuition. I think that's kind of how that went down. And people are talking about this horrible thing that happened down there. But anybody ever heard of OnlyFans? I mean, that's what's going on right now. But for some reason, what went on down there is different in some way. It's just, and if there's any girls watching this that are thinking about OnlyFans, I'm going to say it. Don't do it. Don't do it. You think the internet's bad now. In the not distant future, you're going to be able to point your remote at the TV and go click, and it's going to give you the person's name, probably where they live, their age, all their social media accounts. Any face you see, you go click. We're coming up on that. What's that? Dino something said hi. I'm having a hard time. It's getting real bright outside. Dino, Kenny, how you doing? We're doing a delivery here in the next few minutes. I picked up a 1,500-pound crate of some kind of gears, and I have been skirting along the Tennessee border with Virginia, going east to west, and we're going up here to the town of Jamestown, Tennessee, to, I don't even know the name of the company. Wait a minute, it's right here. I have paperwork, and I can read. It's going to Micro Metals in Jamestown, Tennessee, whatever they do. And we're delivering this here in the next few minutes. And I'm going to get lunch and get some fuel and then call the head shed. Dino, there it is. 3 assassinations. They stopped the guy. Oh, yeah, that guy that had his car armed. He had all kinds of weapons. And are they in the chat with us? Who's they? Well, people jump on here and say weird stuff. There's a couple on here, feed that just not relevant. I had a guy come on here yesterday, threw a colossal hissy fit. His screen name is Passport Adventures, and he was complaining about me live streaming. Okay, it's dangerous. Okay, could you explain how? Well, it's dangerous to all the cars around you. Why is my phone sitting on my dashboard in a holder filming dangerous to everybody around it? And then he starts throwing out all the personal insults. And here's the worst part. I dug into my subscribers and he subscribed to me. So I went and blocked him because I've heard about it. But his name was Passport Adventures. Is he some guy in India that thinks he's a baller? Thinks he's some kind of big time operator or something. I'm like, why do you come on here and throw a hissy fit on somebody's page over something that's idiotic? Well, if you're filming, it's dangerous. I got a dash camera. Is that dangerous? I mean, what? I'm not holding my phone in my hand. I'm not texting. Occasionally reading this, but it's just filming. I flew professionally for a living. I know how to work radios and talk on the radio and fly 3-dimensionally. I mean, I can do all those things at one time. I think I can talk to my phone driving down the road in a 2-dimensional world. But that's the only person I've ever had come in here throwing a fit. That's a perpetual yard sale going on. Yeah, that was mildly annoying. If somebody's not happy about something, I get that. But when they just start throwing around the insults, that's, name calling, then you've lost the argument at that point. Let's be real. I think the reason there's people that hate Trump so much is politics is a weird game. And I honestly believe that most people who go into politics do it with pure intentions. They just get fed up one day and go, I want to fix this. So you start low. You start as local city council or, community garbage. And then you get some support. And then you try to become a congressman because there's 535 of them versus starting out as a senator because there's only 100. So it's a little more difficult. So they get elected and they're a junior congressman in some little district over here that doesn't really mean anything. And they're going to come in there and they're going to clean house. Well, here's how this works. Before you can clean house, you need to have some power. You need to have some clout. How do you get clout? You get on a committee, 3 congressmen or women get on a committee to go do whatever. Now you have power. But before you get on the committee, you owe me something before I appoint you on this committee. So you start making a trade-off. And to move up the food chain, you have to sell your soul. You have to make trades and deals with people and blah, blah, blah. And that just rolls, and it rolls, and it rolls. And you go up the food chain. By the time you're running for office, the high office, the presidency, you have sold and compromised yourself out of existence. That's just how that works. So along comes Trump. He doesn't know anything about. He's not beholden to any senator, any congressman, any committee, any group. He's just doing his thing, and he doesn't do it like. Not only does he not owe anybody anything, he doesn't operate like a politician. He operates like a businessman, and that's how he gets stuff done. If you remember, he started making noise about buying Greenland, which is like, huh? He doesn't want to buy Greenland. Their response was, they upped their the Netherlands upped their military presence, which allowed the United States to pull back defensive stuff that we had in Greenland, which was the goal. Get them to spend some more money to defend themselves. We get to pull our stuff out, and we don't have to spend money up there, which I don't know why we were up there in the first place. And that was the goal. So he's actually, radar. He's doing these roundabout deals, and it works. And the extreme politicians don't like it because, right, the white one? The white one right there. That's him. And the mainstream politicians don't like this because it's getting in the way of their system. And you can't control what he's doing. And I think that's the problem, is he's flipping over the apple cart. Because politics, generally speaking, the presidency, I explain it. The presidency, being in the White House, is a super tanker. It doesn't matter who's holding the wheel. You can bump it a little left, you can bump it a little right, but the tanker is going to keep going in one direction. And that kind of makes sense to me. Now you've got some dude in there that figured out how to make the tanker move around more like a speedboat. And there's people that don't like that because it's a threat to their system. It's a threat to their comfort. It's a threat to their little scams. It's, how they want the world to operate. And people get upset by that. Like that USA thing, they start finding out they're just throwing money in all directions for no reason. Literally, we got to study how happy people are in Myanmar. We need to study fertility in Nigeria. It's abstract art in Afghanistan, so people will appreciate it. What's that? What? Oh. Okay, we're driving off the reservation here, and I think this may start dropping off here in the near future. And yeah, I think we're going to start losing signal here because I'm so in the reception. All right, I'm dropping off here in the next 20 minutes, and I'll see what happens after that. I'll be in touch, but I'm going to let you guys go. Thanks for hanging around and watching. I like when people jump in here and comment. I get a kick out of it. And you guys have a great day.